My name is Steve Felgus. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Land and Minerals Management here at the Department of the Interior. And thank you for joining us today to hear about and provide feedback on the department's proposed modifications to the draft formula grant guidance for the orphan well remediation program. You are our most important partners in this effort. We know that this program cannot succeed without your efforts and your help. And that's why we greatly value your input, reactions, and feedback. And as you know, the bipartisan infrastructure law allocates nearly $4.3 billion for grants to plug, remediate, and reclaim orphan wells across the country. Since the first $560 million in state grants were issued last fall, states have been hard at work cleaning up polluted sites, cutting down on methane emissions and water contamination, reducing health impacts on overburdened communities, and creating good-paying jobs. But of course, that's just the start. We're proposing that the next set of grants, what we are calling phase one of the formula grants, distribute up to $660 million to states to continue this great work. Over the last several months, leadership of the Department of the Interior, including Secretary Holland, Infrastructure Coordinator Winnie Stackelberg, and others, have had a chance to visit a number of you on this call and see firsthand the work that's happening and the importance of the next round of grants. We'd like to thank you for your hospitality, and I certainly hope to be able to see some of this activity firsthand myself in the near future. Formula grants represent the largest pool of funds available to states under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Orphan Well Program, so this guidance is critical to ensuring efficient, effective, and responsible use of taxpayer funds during the coming years. Thank you to all the states and the IOGCC for your constructive and thoughtful feedback and comments on the draft guidance that was released in January. We received input from a number of perspectives: states, labor organizations, environmental groups, contractors, and more. And we tried to strike a balance in the edits that we're proposing. The goal is to provide states with the certainty and flexibility needed to put the funds to use cleaning up orphan wells, while at the same time minimizing the risks that come with distributing such a large amount of money, and demonstrating to Congress and the US taxpayers that we are being good stewards of the resources they have provided us. Once formula grants are awarded, states will have 5 years to obligate the funds, which I'm sure is a great relief to many of you who work tirelessly to meet the speedy initial grant requirements in the law. Knowing that many of you are eager to apply for and receive your next grant, we hope we are not too far away from being able to finalize this guidance. Our plan for today will be to go through several slides highlighting some of the edits to the draft guidance, and then open the floor to hear from you and answer questions to the best of our ability. Thank you again for joining us today and being our partners in this joint effort to implement the Orphan Well program and put people to work while improving the environment and the lives of millions of people across the country. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Peter Gallagher, our advisor for orphan wells at the Department of the Interior. Peter.
Great, thank you, Steve. I'm going to now share my screen and then go through some slides. Hopefully it won't take more than 10 or 15 minutes, and then we can open it up to questions and comments from the states. Great, so everyone should be seeing this at this point. And I also just want to note that Kimber Davis, the director of the Orphan Wells Program Office, and Winnie Stackelberg, the department's infrastructure coordinator, aren't able to join us today, but I know that they would have wanted to have been here to hear your feedback and comments, but we will be passing on what we take from this discussion to them. So just a little quick background. As everybody knows, there are 3 types of orphan well state grants: initial, formula, and performance. The draft formula guidance was released in January of this year, and the comment period ended in late March. We initially proposed distributing $2 billion to 26 eligible states over multiple phases. Phase 1 would have made $500 million available to states based on data submitted in late 2021. During the comment period, we held a meeting with states in the middle of February and a public webinar in early March. In response to feedback that we did get, the Orphan Wells Office developed an alternative risk-based approach to phasing to address states' concerns. And we also had follow-up conversations with states on data reporting elements and the phasing in the middle of March. We incorporated the new phasing approach and other modifications into this updated guidance that you all should have received last week and that we are here to discuss today. So on the phasing, the updated approach that we do have in this the new guidance is to maintain a form of phasing, but with no recalculation of the state's total formula grant eligibility in between the phases. So in phase 1, which is this year, states may apply for up to a $25 million formula grant or for a grant up to 25% of the total formula eligibility for that state, whichever of the two of these is greater. And so states with a total formula eligibility of less than 25 million may receive their entire grant in phase one. So for them, effectively, there's no phasing. They get all of their funds at once. States eligible to receive more than 25 million may submit additional grant applications during subsequent phases for the next portion of their balance, and would refer you to the FAQ document that we shared last week as well for additional questions you might have on that phasing, and then we could get into any questions you might have after these slides. So here's a breakdown of what we have for the different state formula grant eligibility. You can see 26 eligible states, total eligibility of the formula grants in the left-hand column, what we proposed in January, and then updated amounts that is in the updated guidance here today. And I will note that there were some changes here for the 5 states eligible to receive the largest amounts, because in the draft phase one amounts that the department released in January of that last year, and that we incorporated into the draft guidance released in January of this year, we failed to take off the 3.5% federal allotment from that, even though it was already taken from the total formula eligibility. So the total formula eligibility isn't changing for those 5 states that I mentioned, which are California, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, and Texas. It's just that that 3.5% didn't translate to that phase one amount. So those 5 states will see that their phase one eligible amounts are slightly less than what was included in the guidance released last week, only by a couple $1 million each, I think. So that correction has been made. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, those of you that did. If anyone has any questions about that, we can follow up on that later. And so here's a map showing the minimum number of years or phases that each state would be required to collect their formula grants over. So you can see the states eligible to receive the smallest amount in formula grants. 9 of them can receive their funds in 1 phase, while the largest states eligible to receive the largest amounts, a minimum of 4 phases. And in the FAQ document, I think we described 6 phases are what we are currently planning. And so this is just the minimum number of years or phases required, and states could stretch that out to more phases if they chose. So we're now going to go through just quickly some of the high-level modifications that we do have in this guidance. First one being phasing, already discussed that. Second, definitions. Few definitions have been modified, including referring to states' definitions for reclamation, restoration, and remediation for wells on state and private lands. Also, some edits to split estates to make it more permissive for states to plug wells. These funds can be used where the surface or the subsurface is owned by the state or by a private party, but we do require coordination with the department and or the tribes in those split estate contexts. Also, bipartisan infrastructure law signs are an allowable use of the grants. They would be administrative funds. And I think we'd be strongly supportive and encourage states to use signage to help demonstrate and communicate to the public and local communities the value, the benefit, the effectiveness of the work that's being done in partnership between states, the private sector, and the federal government, and the benefits of the infrastructure law. The phase one application window. So states will have from the time the guidance is released through the end of this year to apply, and it's the intent to review and approve those applications on a rolling basis. And applications would be submitted through Grant Solutions. Additionally, a detailed budget proposal. We're requiring that budgets provided by states in the applications include planned obligations and drawdowns per fiscal year, and identify administrative costs that are going to be tracked separately from other direct project costs. Work plan edits have also been changed somewhat in the guidance. States are asked to provide a preliminary schedule of activities for the period of performance and to propose performance goals and milestones for the activities described in order to achieve the objectives of the work plan. Additional work plan edits. We increase the flexibility in identifying upfront in the application which wells the state will plug with the formula funds. And we are asking that states describe how they approach several workforce-related topics, including training programs, bundling contracts, employing oil and gas industry workers. An additional change in the guidance or clarification is that currently in phase one, we are not permitting states to use the wells plugged with federal grants to generate carbon credits or offsets. But we do acknowledge that this decision is subject to change as this asset industry evolves, more information is collected, and the department's understanding of the potential connection to the carbon credit and private investment evolves and changes over time. There is also an additional certification added to the guidance, whereby states must certify that funds won't be used to plug wells where there is an identifiable financially responsible party capable of plugging. And then the last several here we can go through. There are minor modifications to the methane detection and quantification elements of the guidance. Nothing significant, but we do include that a post-plug inspection should take place within 12 months, and that at a minimum, there should be an arm's length connection between the entity conducting that post-plugging inspection. There are also recommended workforce standards in the guidance. Again, these are recommended and not required, but it touches on certain certifications around union workers and project labor agreements. The reporting elements of the guidance, states are required to submit quarterly technical and financial performance reports, and the guidance does include additional details on what those reports must include. This was a change from semi-annual, I believe, and the data reporting template submittal schedule has been changed from monthly to quarterly. And then we do eliminate the request for NAICS codes in that reporting portion of the guidance. And then finally, unmanned aircraft systems, drones, it incorporates the requirements from secretarial order in terms of using federal grants for purchasing this type of equipment. Two other supporting documents that are currently being updated that are relevant here are the methane protocol. And within the next month, we hope to upload to our website a new version of the methane emissions reporting guidelines or protocol. This was released in April of last year and has since been clarified. Some amendments and modifications have been made to clarify what it is that is being required so that implementation and the requirements are more straightforward for the users of it. So hopefully that will be available shortly, and we can answer any questions you all have about that at that time. And then finally, the data reporting template, the Orphan Wells Program Office is currently working to address the comments and the recommendations made by the IOGCC and the Groundwater Protection Council Orphan Wells Data Management Work Group. We received those recommendations several weeks ago. We had a meeting within the last couple of weeks with that work group, and we're currently updating that template with the hopes of adding additional flexibility and clarity for states as they'll use that template quarterly to meet the reporting requirements of the guidance. In terms of next steps, so we're here today to definitely hear from you all, have a conversation, receive your feedback on the greatest outstanding concerns and most significant challenges to implementation of these phase one grants. And definitely want to continue to hear from you after today's conversation as well. Reach consensus with you all, understanding that any additional significant revisions that we might want to make to this guidance before we can finalize it will require additional department review and approval, which could slow down or push back the time that we can finalize the guidance and then start accepting applications. Once we do finalize the guidance, we'll release it and states may begin submitting their applications. After that, our hope is to schedule a technical assistance webinar where the Interior Business Center can provide states with information to answer some questions on topics related to administrative, project costs, indirect costs, award date, effective date, and similar such topics. And then the Orphan Wells Office and IBC will begin to review and process applications as they come in. And based on our current timeline, it's unlikely that states receive their phase one grants before the end of this fiscal year. So grants are most likely to be awarded in the beginning of FY 2024. That is all we have for this presentation. And so I think we can turn it over to Dylan and Lynn, who I think we're going to speak first and then maybe open it.